So you said that you noticed the impacts of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion ideology starting in the 2010s already. What were the first signs of that? How did it first affect your work at the office?
It first affected my work in the office, just that you notice the rituals starting to slip in. That's how it would start off. Rituals and just a change in tone and things. Like when I'd first started, people were quite scrupulous about leaving their politics at the door and not discussing politics. Like everyone in the government is quite interested in politics and what's going on because it affects our careers and stuff like that and what we're going to be doing at work. But people would discuss it in such a way, in a nonpartisan sort of way, right? Not in a like rah rah for this party or rah rah for that
Right.
party. But isn't it interesting that this thing has happened? And you'd see that start to shift where people would, quite openly criticize right wing figures and conservative figures and stuff, especially when we had a more conservative government, which confusingly was called the Liberal Party at the time. But
Yes,
people would
same
start.
here.
Yeah,
Also the Liberals here. Yes, it's the right wing. Yeah.
in our province, they tried to change their name to escape that, but then have recently been sort of disbanded. So there was no escaping it, I guess. But people would, people became a lot more overtly partisan, and things started slipping in, like land acknowledgements and just sort of casually sort of putting down Canada as a country and taking it for granted that, the existence of things like widespread systemic racism and stuff like that, people would start to speak like these things were a given and stuff like that. But I think the land acknowledgements are really, really quite foundational because I didn't think a lot about them at the time, but it's a ritual. And it's a ritual that slipped its way in. And once you've started putting up with it and you're doing it, you kind of don't realize until you've been doing it. But once you've been doing it for a few years, it's almost like you've compromised yourself already. And you've also opened the door. If you didn't mind performing this ritual, well, what's one more thing? What's putting your pronouns into your email signature, right? You've already got a foot in the door. Just step through.
Yeah, we have the same thing here, of course, the welcome to country, which is very similar to the land acknowledgement. Although I think that the welcome to country is a little bit more, I prefer to the Canadian style land acknowledgements because it at least ends by saying something like we celebrate all Australians, which is a nice sentiment to end on. But I find it fundamentally nonsensical, the idea that there's a kind of blood and soil connection between specific groups of people and a country, especially given that there's never any genetic testing of anybody to see whether they really are descendants of the first Indigenous Australians or not. And the definition of who counts as Indigenous is also quite contested, and could be only a few % of your DNA. And I just find it contrary to my liberal and universalist beliefs, the idea that land intrinsically belongs to people as a result of their heritage, rather than belonging to everybody who has been permitted to legally emigrate, and who is part of building the country and being part of a productive workforce, etc.
Yeah, there's a lot of things packed into it. I mean, I think what I sort of take away from land acknowledgements a lot of the time is that it sets up to say, like, here's the status of the land, here's the historical wrongs that have happened, and we are now recognizing that the different people on this land have different statuses here. And I would assume some sort of different rights and different responsibilities here on this land. Like one of the things a lot of people will add is to say that I'm an uninvited guest in this land, which I always find that one quite wild. I mean, I'd say that's almost a synonym for being an invader, really. And I mean, if you're an uninvited guest, you should obviously leave.
Yeah, that is really odd. Aren't we all uninvited guests on this earth?
I guess, yeah, we are on the planet. Yeah, if we look at the meta, I guess, yeah.